The night air was crisp, carrying with it the faint aroma of roasted chestnuts from a vendor nearby. It was a typical evening in New York City. Taxicabs honked, pedestrians bustled along the sidewalk, and the distant hum of the city seemed never-ending. But for one man sitting on a street corner, time felt frozen in place. James Monroe had once been a man of promise. A decorated veteran, he had served his country with pride, but life had taken an unfortunate turn. After losing his wife to cancer and battling his own demons, he had ended up where he never thought he would, on the streets. His tattered coat barely shielded him from the cold, and his empty cup rattled each time he shook it, hoping for some spare change from passing strangers. Most people walked past without a second glance. Some looked at him with pity, others with disdain. James had long learned to ignore their stares. He wasn't one to beg, but tonight, hunger gnawed at his stomach more than usual. He took a deep breath, his pride weighing heavy on his shoulders, before looking up at a tall young man walking toward him. The young man looked familiar, though James couldn't immediately place where he had seen him before. Summoning his courage, James called out, "Excuse me, young man. Can you spare $1?" The young man stopped in his tracks. His sharp blue eyes studied James with curiosity, but there was no condescension in his gaze, only genuine interest. The young man was Barron Trump. James, realizing who he had just spoken to, hesitated. Of all the people he could have asked for help, he had unknowingly asked the son of one of the wealthiest men in the world. Surely, this boy had never known hardship a day in his life. But instead of walking away, Barron knelt down so that he was at eye level with James. "What's your name, sir?" Barron asked, his voice soft yet confident. James blinked in surprise. "James. James Monroe." Barron nodded. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Monroe. You served, didn't you?" James frowned slightly. "How'd you know?" Barron smiled. "My grandfather was a veteran. I recognize the way you carry yourself. Even sitting here, you still hold your back straight." James chuckled, his lips curling into a faint smile for the first time in days. "Old habits die hard, I suppose." Barron reached into his pocket, and James expected him to pull out a crisp dollar bill, maybe even a 20. But instead, Barron did something shocking. He sat down beside James. "Tell me your story," Barron said. "Not the one people assume. The real one." James looked at him in disbelief. Most people tossed coins and walked away. No one asked about his story. No one cared to listen. And yet, here was the son of a billionaire, sitting on the cold pavement, asking about his life. For a moment, James hesitated. But something in Barron's expression told him this was not a mere act of pity. This was genuine. And so, he began to speak. James told Barron about his youth, how he had grown up in a small town with dreams bigger than himself. He spoke of his time in the military, the friendships he had forged and lost, the battles he had fought both abroad and within himself. He spoke of his wife, Maria, the love of his life, who had been his anchor through everything. And he spoke of the day he lost her, how the grief had swallowed him whole, leading him down a path he never imagined, one that had brought him here, to this very street corner. Barron listened intently, never interrupting, his expression unreadable yet filled with empathy. When James finished, there was a long silence between them. "You didn't deserve this," Barron finally said. "No one does." James exhaled, shaking his head. "Deserve or not, it happened. Life doesn't always ask what we want." Barron glanced at the cup in James's hand. "You asked for $1. But what if I gave you something better?" James raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Barron stood up, dusting off his pants. "Give me a day. Meet me here tomorrow. Same time. No questions. Just trust me." James wanted to ask why, but something about Barron's confidence made him nod. "All right, kid. I'll be here." Barron smiled. "Good. See you tomorrow, Mr. Monroe. And with that, he walked away, disappearing into the city lights, leaving James with a newfound sense of hope, something he hadn't felt in a very long time. James didn't know why he had agreed to meet Barron again. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps it was the way the young man had spoken to him, not as a beggar, but as a human being. Either way, he found himself at the same spot the next evening, waiting. The sun had barely set when Barron arrived, dressed in casual clothes, a determined expression on his face. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood a middle-aged man in a suit, holding a folder and nodding politely at James. "Mr. Monroe," Barron greeted. "I'm glad you came." James narrowed his eyes, his survival instincts kicking in. "What's this about, kid?" Barron gestured to the man beside him. "This is Mr. Caldwell. He runs a program for veterans, helping them get back on their feet. Employment, housing, support. I told him about you." James was speechless. He had expected a meal, maybe a bit of cash. Not this. Caldwell stepped forward. "Barron has arranged for you to stay in a temporary shelter tonight, with a pathway to permanent housing if you're interested. We also have job placement services and counseling." James swallowed hard. "Why would you do this?" Barron smiled. "Because you served your country, and now it's time someone served you." James felt an unexpected lump in his throat. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a burden, but as a person worthy of help. With a deep breath, he nodded. "All right. I'm in." Barron extended his hand, and James took it, feeling something he had nearly forgotten: hope. The next few days were a blur of new beginnings. James was taken to a temporary shelter, where he was given clean clothes and a warm bed. The staff was kind, and for the first time in months, he felt like a person again. But it wasn't just the shelter that had started to heal him, it was Barron. Every day, Barron would visit him, bringing with him a sense of purpose and determination. Together, they would talk about life, about the future, and about the choices James had made along the way. Barron didn't sugarcoat anything. He asked James difficult questions, pushing him to confront his past and find the strength to move forward. "You're not just a man who lost everything, James," Barron said one day as they sat in the shelter's common room. "You're a man who still has everything inside him to rebuild. You just need to trust yourself again." James had to admit, Barron was right. He had forgotten what it felt like to trust himself, to have the belief that he could make a difference in his own life. But with Barron's encouragement, he began to believe in that possibility once more. James also began to participate in the veterans program that Barron had arranged for him. He attended counseling sessions, where he opened up about his grief, his struggles, and his guilt. Slowly, the walls he had built around himself started to crumble. As the weeks passed, James's confidence began to return. He found a part-time job working as a janitor at a local school, a small but significant step forward. He no longer felt invisible. Every paycheck he received was a reminder that he was capable, that he could stand on his own 2 feet again. One afternoon, Barron visited him with a smile. "I think you're ready for the next step," he said. "How would you feel about moving into your own place?" James's heart swelled. The thought of having a home again, a place where he could rest without fear or shame, was overwhelming. I think I'd like that." And so, Barron helped him find an affordable apartment. It wasn't much, but to James, it was everything. It was a place where he could begin the next chapter of his life, one built on the foundation of hope and determination. As James settled into his new apartment, he thought about how far he had come. He no longer saw himself as the broken man who had once sat on the street corner, begging for change. He was a man who had been given a second chance, by a young man who saw something in him that he had long since lost faith in. That night, as James sat at his kitchen table, a knock came at the door. He opened it to find Barron standing there, holding a small gift bag. "I thought you might need a little housewarming gift," Barron said with a grin. James smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "You've done more for me than I can ever repay, Barron." Barron shrugged. "You don't need to repay me. You just need to keep going." And with that, he turned and left, leaving James standing in the doorway, not just with a house, but with a renewed sense of purpose. Months had passed since Barron Trump's offer of help had first set James Monroe on the path to redemption. The world outside James's apartment seemed like a distant memory, one filled with struggle, loneliness, and despair. But inside his humble new home, a sense of peace had settled over him, one he had never thought possible again. He had a job now, a steady one, working at the school as a janitor. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. It gave him something to look forward to every morning, something that grounded him in the reality that he could change his life. More than that, he had regained his dignity. Each day, as he walked down the street toward work, he no longer felt like a shadow. He was a man walking with purpose, even if that purpose was as simple as getting to the job on time. But it wasn't just the work or the apartment that had brought James back to life, it was the ongoing bond he had with Barron. Every week, Barron would stop by to check in on him. Sometimes they would have coffee together, other times, they would talk about the future, about dreams James had long since abandoned. One afternoon, Barron arrived with a look of excitement in his eyes. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a folder from his bag. James raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" Barron set the folder down on the kitchen table. "It's an opportunity. I know you've been working hard, and I think it's time you take the next step. There's a position at the school, a maintenance supervisor role. It's full-time, with a much better salary. They need someone with experience and a good work ethic. And I think you're the right fit." James's heart raced as he stared at the folder. It was a far cry from the life he had lived just a few months ago. He had never imagined he would be in a position to apply for such a role, let alone have someone like Barron offer him a chance. "I don't know what to say," James muttered, overwhelmed. Barron smiled. "Say yes, James. You've earned it."